This season, we are proud to be partnering with two fantastic media organizations to help us reach more listeners like you. KUOW is Seattle's NPR news station, and Deseret News is a multi-platform newspaper out of Salt Lake City. Help us by helping them. Learn how at kuow.org/brave or deseret.com/subscribe. Hey y'all, and welcome to 1 week till the election. Yep, just 1 week. So, does that freak you out? Are you largely fine? Wondering how things are going to turn out? Are you trying not to think about it too much so you can go about your day? Or are you trying to think about it so you stay informed and alert, or just try to make an impact in the final stretch? Participate. That's one of the big ways we citizen in America, according to Baratunde Thurston, a prior guest on this podcast, who uses the word citizen as a verb, as an action, not just a status. And there are so many ways to participate and make an impact on this election beyond just casting that vote. There's people making phone calls, writing postcards, trying to get likely voters to become real voters, in the direction they prefer, of course, and especially in those crucial swing states. Just about all the ways people participate in the run-ups to elections tend to be in service of a particular campaign, which makes sense. These are the crucial debates at the crucial times. But there is one way people are going to participate on November 5th that has everything to do with the challenge of this moment and nothing to do with a single electoral campaign. And for this week's Beat episode, we are going to a red state, a blue state, and a swing state to hear all about it.
Really, I think it's just showing people, even though this may or may not work, we're going to go the distance and we're not stopping.
That was Roger Hayes, one of hundreds of people across the country who is going to do something pretty wild on Election Day. They're going to pair up with someone on the other side of the political divide, head to their local polling place, and show their fellow voters that no matter who we're voting for or who will win, we can and must hold this union together. Roger and his paired political opposite, Dorsey Cartwright, live in Austin, Texas. When we asked Dorsey why she wanted to do this, she thought back to something she heard before the 2020 election through the nonprofit No Labels.
And one of the senators, the Republican senator, I think one of the No Labels members had said something about, why is there so much, fighting and name calling and everything in the houses? You need to be more civil. And he said, that's very true. And if the public would be more civil with one another, you would see that reflected in the houses. And that just went, that's a simple thing, but it just went through me.
Roger, the red to Dorsey's blue, explains his involvement like this. Oh, by the way, the voice you'll hear right after his is Richard Davies. He's the host of the How Do We Fix It podcast, and for this episode, an honorary correspondent for A Braver Way. Thank you, Richard.
No matter who wins, someone loses. And in politics, this is my thoughts. We used to kind of talk about breaking glass in the military. Someone has to clean it up, and it's going to be us, all of us. And so we really do need to do something to slow down the anger, the rancor, and really get back to having conversations.
Where are you going to do this? Are you going to sit behind a table outside a polling station? Where?
Roger has been so great. He talked to people until he found a place in Austin that has a diversity of voters. It's a church, and you have to be 100 yards away from, the polling place.
Small correction here. In Texas, it's actually 100 feet, not 100 yards. So they'll be across the street as opposed to a football field length away.
But the point being is, we'll have our color zone. I'll have a blue cap like Roger's red, but we also have we're going to have two sides. And one of us says something about, one of us is red, one of us is blue, but we're Americans through and through, which on one hand is kind of hokey, but it's like a chant.
I'm really excited about it. I'm hopeful. Hope is not a strategy, but it gives us a little bit of that encouragement about the future. And that's really, why this is so important. I mean, it's a beta test. It's new, like Dorsey said. But what's really cool about it is that we're putting ourselves out there. We're growing.
Dorsey and Roger are in the red state of Texas. Trek northwest to the blue state of Washington on Election Day, and you will find another duo standing against the current, Don Goldberg and Elizabeth Dahl.
I've been in my little blue bubble, especially in Seattle, Washington, and I didn't think it was fair to myself. So I wanted to reach out. The first thing I did was I went to the Braver Angels convention.
That convention brought 700 people to Kenosha, Wisconsin, a group that was evenly split between liberals and conservatives. Don got to know a lot of people who disagree with his politics, and his view of those people changed.
The other is not necessarily the enemy. They just happen to be another side. And maybe if you consider that other side, you can, in my case, be more literally liberal, accepting all points of view.
I'm sorry.
Is that the ferry boat?
Yeah, apologies. I'll mute myself.
That was the ferry boat. How exciting.
Elizabeth, as you can hear, lives across the water from Seattle.
Yes, and I live across the street from the ferry, so that was, believe it or not, with all of my windows closed, that is still how loud the ferry horn is.
Elizabeth is conservative and grew up in a more rural part of Washington state.
I became concerned that if we weren't talking to each other and we couldn't understand each other because of politics, then we definitely wouldn't be able to recognize each other's needs or help each other in a crisis. And in rural places, it's not the government that you rely on for help in a crisis, it's your neighbors.
So come Election Day, Dawn, a liberal voter from Seattle, and Elizabeth, a conservative voter from rural Kitsap County, will be stationed outside the elections office and ballot drop-off location in Renton, Washington. They'll be sharing their political leanings and this shared commitment on a day you would least expect it. From there, we'll head south to, dun-dun-dun, one of the 7 swing states that could determine the course of this election. Martin Hunka and Tarleton Farron are in Arizona, both in the Tucson area. Martin, the liberal in this pair, moved to the U.S. from Germany in 1993. He lived in California for a couple decades before settling down in the Grand Canyon state.
We moved to Arizona, and I love the open landscape, the cacti, the weather, having blue sky more than 300 days a year. I love that.
Why did Martin sign up to stand alongside a political opposite at a polling place on Election Day?
Well, for me, it is to take a stance against what some politicians seem to be doing nowadays. They seem to be pitching us against each other and using terminology that I haven't heard in this country before, like calling the other side like the enemy from within. And normalizing, name calling, dehumanizing the other. And I find that deeply frightening. There's not much I can do as a just regular citizen against that. But this is an opportunity to take a public stance against this.
Tarleton, the conservative in this pair, grew up in rural Arizona before moving to Tucson as an adult.
Coming to school here, working here, has given me an opportunity to take a lot of the views that I had in my childhood and compare them kind of in a more blue environment. And so that's given me a lot of chance to think a little deeply about, why I view things the way I do and kind of compare and contrast different approaches to politics, if you will.
Now, in case you're getting the impression that Martin, Tarleton, Elizabeth Dawn, Dorsey, Roger, and the hundreds of others doing this are just going to be waltzing through this election like everything's fine.
I feel nervous, and I didn't used to feel like this. To me, in the past, it was more like the excitement like of let's say a football game. And I want my team to win, but if the other team wins, it's not the end of the world. And this time I feel differently, not necessarily that it's going to be the end of the world, but this is not a normal election for me. And I'm worried that we are down on a path from which it will be very difficult to return.
I feel like in Arizona this year, we've had a never-ending summer. It's just been kind of brutally hot. And we've finally started to feel a touch of relief from that heat. And it's been very welcoming in that sense. And, to me, Election Day is kind of like that. It's like when you hit that hottest day of summer and you're really just hoping things are going to start to cool down. It's a climax of sorts. But I think regardless about how we feel about our options and our votes and their eventual outcomes, there is something really cool about having so many different people with so much different life experience weighing in at the box and making their voices heard at the same moment of history and potentially changing it.
So this election day, if you head to the polls and happen to see an unlikely pair hanging out nearby, maybe wearing a red shirt and a blue shirt and holding up a banner, go up and say hi. Shake the hand of your political other if you dare, because hey, it's gonna be a weird day. Maybe kind of a scary one. But this is what we do. We disagree, we vote, and no matter what, we keep going.
We really just want to be open in case anyone wants to come up and chat about it. If people are feeling anxious or people are surprised at kind of the different sort of message that we're offering, to know that there are people like us in our community that are willing to talk and maybe even have some of those harder conversations, willing to have a little bit of that courage to step out of our own little area and really try to listen to each other.
I am a keyboard warrior, but it's time to get out. You have to get out on the streets. You've got to be a citizen activist. And so this is really, for me, kind of an interesting, possibly fun way of getting out on the street.
If you want to know for yourself what it will be like to stand with someone from across the political divide at the polls on Election Day 2024, go to braverangels.org/election day to learn more about this citizen action and maybe even sign up. We will be back next week, one day earlier than normal, on Monday, with an episode that will look back over 1 year of tips, tools, and insights on this podcast to help equip you for the big day, November 5th. Whatever comes, I hope you never stop participating in and shaping this beautiful, messy republic of ours. No matter the outcome, no matter what. Thank you all so much for joining us for this beat episode of A Braver Way. A Braver Way is produced by Braver Angels and distributed in partnership with KUOW and Deseret News. We get financial support from the MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust and Reclaim Curiosity, and Count USA Facts as a proud sponsor. Our senior producer and editor is David Albright. Our producer is Jessica Jones. Our theme music is by the fantastic #1 Billboard bluegrass charting hip-hop band, Gangsta Grass. A special thanks to Ben Karen, Don Goldberg, Gabby Timmis, Caitlin Annis, and Emily Province. I'm your host and guide across the divide, Monica Guzman. If you want to share your story with us, please do. You can always reach us at abraverway@braverangels.org or join our text line by texting the word BRAVE to 206-926-9955. Take heart, everyone. Till next time. And now a little more about one of our two fantastic media partners. KUOW is proud to partner with A Braver Way to help this podcast reach more listeners like you, because they believe that a better democracy begins with an informed public. As Seattle's NPR news station, KUOW is committed to providing local stories, trusted perspectives, and inspiring conversations, all free of paywalls. Over 90% of KUOW's operating budget comes from community support. If you value this podcast, please consider donating to KUOW at kuow.org/brave.